Yeah. So, thank you very much for being here. I hope you still have energy for our session. This is going to be the most important session of the day. My name is Tilahun Amede. I work for AGRA. I'm the director of one of the 4 programs of AGRA. AGRA, we changed our names to Sustainably Growing Africa's Food Systems, is probably the biggest African institution working on agriculture in the continent. And the topic of soil health and harvest is a very important topic for us. When we talk about sustainable harvest, it's a combination of things. One is really farmers having access, and in most cases, quality access to critical inputs. So soil-related inputs are one of them. The second issue is really using those inputs and knowledge efficiently to enhance productivity, return per unit of investment, of labor, of land, of fertilizer, of really critical inputs. Then the third level is once you harvest, of course, you have to reduce post-harvest losses. In most countries, it's a major issue, to 30%. Some people even estimate more. And all that, of course, has to be linked to incentives for people to produce. And markets are critical incentives. Policy, investment is critical investing. And, if you see the continent of Africa, I know a bit more. In 2050, we need to almost double productivity and total production to feed the growing population. And that, about 70% of that, about 10% will come from land expansion, from saving, losses. But about 70% should come from extra food. And that extra food should, in fact, be produced on the same land. So, how do we make sure that there is sustainable production that minimizes environmental risks, at the same time feed the growing population? So the whole of today in the morning, we were talking about real soil health a lot in different forms. But the issue is, one, smallholder farmers, large-scale farmers are very diverse. Even in one country, could get, you apply the same amount of fertilizer, the same amount of manure, same amount of type of cover crop. Yield could be, in some places 2 tons, in other places 9 tons. So it's about really appreciating diversity and affordability. And the issue also is, our continents are very diverse. Some are very dry places, and for soil to be regenerated, there's limited water, for example. There's limited biomass. In other places, you have extra byproducts, for example, manure, which should be recycled, should come to the system. In other places, your entry is probably, managing soil acidity, because whatever you add in terms of input, seed, fertilizer, will not produce any yield unless you correct the pH. So that diversity is really the key issue that we'd like to address. So in the panel here, I have very experienced people among ourselves. I will not attempt to introduce them and dilute their CVs. So I'd like them to briefly introduce themselves, 1 minute each, before we come to, and we still expect one more panelist to come. So let me start from Inji. Can you please briefly introduce yourself?
Okay. My name is Inji Zaki. I'm the Regional Sustainability and Digitalization for BSF for the MENA region, always with agricultural solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask Petra to introduce yourself?
My name is Petra Laux. I represent Syngenta. I'm based in Basel. We are a global agriculture innovation company. My role is sustainability, public affairs, and regulatory for crop protection.
Thank you. Can I ask Marcelo?
I am Marcelo Torres. I am agronomic engineer. I am a farmer. I am president of the Argentine No-Till Farmers Associations, an association that working with farmers all over the country, in another country also. We have 40 regional groups addressing regenerative agriculture in different environments, subtropical ones, semi-arids, and we work with science and technology companies.
Thank you very much. So, as I said, we'll expect another panelist to come. So the first question probably to start with is, we're hearing many innovations, interventions from around the world. But, in most of the southern hemisphere, farmers are still reluctant and are struggling to adopt them. So the issue is, how do we create demand? What are really the types of experiences you can share with us in terms of responding to the demand, but also creating demand? Can I start with you, Marcelo?
Okay, thank you. APRESID is a farmer organization, I said, established 30 years ago, working with no-tillage to take care the soil of sloping areas such as those in the center of Argentina. We have neither the adapted technology nor the knowledge to do it, but the farmer protagonism and the conviction that this was the way to take care of the soil was what allowed us to advance in the first years of the development of no-till technology. Although soil care improved, in the following years, many problems associated with no-tillage began to appear. Compactation problem, resistant weeds, long chemical fallows. We start to think about how to solve them without leaving the no-till technology. We discovered that not disturbing soil was enough. It was necessary to implement no-tillage under a system of practice and strategies. Diversification of species within crop rotation, using winter crops, summer crops, and cover or service crops. Transition to an evergreen agriculture. This is keeping our fields covered with living crops and roots as much time as possible. We found that intensification of crop rotation was the key to solve the problem of resistance, weeds, and compactation. Balanced nutrition and integrated pest management, there are other important pillars. There were also problems related to the no-till system itself. For example, in cool areas, such as the one where I live, in the south of Buenos Aires, in this area, the accumulation of stubble under no-till was reducing soil temperature and delaying sowing dates, and the emergence of crops. We are able to solve this problem with the sweep stubble, a dispositive added to the seeder machine that sweeps crop residues from the sowing line. How did we solve all these issues? Thanks to technology, but especially thanks to understanding that technology and no-till system itself need to be adapted to each region and situation. This is complex because we have a country that expands from north to south. We rely on the 40 regional groups we have in order to adapt the model to each area. These regional groups of farmers identify issues specific to each region: salinization problems, water management limitation, yield gap closure. Some of them work on finding initiatives in order to add value to raw material. Others on the integration of livestock and agriculture using service crop. But we noted that farmers need help in order to solve each of those challenges. So we create System Chakras program. It's a research and development methodology led by farmers based on alliance with expert and technology company in order to experiment possible solutions in a real productive scenarios. In the path of adapting no-till system to each situation and region, it's important to generate local information. To do this, we create a specific network. For example, to adapt crops service to different areas, to use biological inputs.
I'll come to those details.
Okay.
I'll come to that. Thank you. Sorry for making you short. So the issue is, there are always second generation challenges. Yeah. So farmers try out, and if they are not adopting it, it means there is something we need to solve. And that's really a type of lesson you are sharing with us. So if I ask the next, the same question to Petra. So how do we address these challenges of non-adoption and create demand from your experience?
Thank you. And let me try and build on what Marcelo has been introducing, because we try to work very close to the farmer and we try to listen to the farmer, and very often we learn from you as much as you can learn from us based on the science we are developing. And when we talk to our clients, what is sustainability, what is soil health, they are very concerned about soil health, mainly in the context of productivity, because bad soil can decrease productivity by up to 50%, and the forecasts are, you gave a nice introduction, Tilahun, that by 2050, 90% of the soils can be degraded if we don't adopt our farming practices. So we try to help farmers to fulfill the expectations. And in our little chat outside, you also said, and your colleagues said, there are so many expectations on farmers. It's not only to provide the food we all need, but it's also reducing the on-farm emissions, protecting biodiversity, increasing soil health. How do we do all of this properly, and what is it we need to develop?
We work with Syngenta in a carbon network, trying to detect the current level of soil organic carbon, the achievable and the potential levels, and close this gap. We work with Syngenta.
Exactly, we try to learn from each other. So, and what can we actually do as a science input company? So we have a Center for Soil Health Research, and we have a chief soil scientist who advises us from a technical background, because also, like you said, soil health is very different depending on the context, depending on the climate, depending on the soil. And while we know the major practices, crop rotation, no-till, all of this, it doesn't mean that it necessarily works. So we provide digital tools to estimate what is the methodology exactly we need in our environment. A farmer has to make around 100 decisions in a farming season. It starts from selecting the right seed, which is the one that is best adapted to the situation here, going to be the most productive, possibly needing the least nutrient input. Then it goes to when do I plant? What is the amount of water required? What is the amount of nutrient? We provide soil sensors to identify what is the distribution of the soil quality on a field. We provide assistance on what to spray and when to spray. And then what is the right time for the harvest. So we try to enable farmers in their regenerative agriculture journey to make the right decisions, because also you asked about what is it that is actually hindering farmers in adopting what seems to be easy in practice, and it's very much the experience and the risk they have to take.
Thank you very much. I think the last mile delivery, both in terms of reach but also content, which is context specific, really matters a lot. We have an additional panelist. Welcome.
you.
Can you introduce yourself briefly?
Yes, is the microphone on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, first and foremost, apologies for being a few minutes late. My name is Pilar Cruz, and I'm a Senior Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer for Cargill, company based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and we're in food and agriculture. So thank you for having me today.
Welcome. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for coming and joining us. So the same question to Inja. There are farmers in your region, for example, who are doing pretty well, and there are other farmers nearby, probably 5 kilometers away, are not doing pretty well. How do we make sure that those farmers who are not doing well learn from the others? What are the strategies? What should happen on the ground, both in terms of incentives but also in terms of policy, to make sure that those who are lagging behind also adopt those best practices?
Okay, let me first start with giving info. I'm pretty sure everyone knows that around the world we have 500 million small farms. And this gives an indication on how pivotal our smallholders represent in the supply chain, and the value chain, the agriculture value chain, and food security, global food security. So with increasing the challenges from soil degradation, loss of water and natural resources, little to no access to finances, this bring it more and more challenging specifically for the smallholder farmers. So, and in order to integrate the smallholder farmers and get them to the speed of the smart farming technologies, regenerative agriculture, and a long list of sustainable agriculture practices, it needs to be a collaborative effort, because farmers alone can't achieve this goal alone. So maybe I'm giving an example from India. India, 1/5 of their GDP is coming from agriculture, and 70% of the rural areas, the livelihood depends on agriculture as well. So BSF Vegetable Seeds and CINI integrated together was a project in 2018 to better integrate 2,000 tribal farmers in India and educate them and bringing them to the value chain. So, and in progress of the project, we came out with other collaborations from high-tech nurseries, other collaborations from renewable energy, solar panels, drip irrigation, high-quality seeds, vegetable seeds, Digital Connect. One more also is farm crop insurance. So with the bunch of collaborations, we achieved with this project a very good outcome that I can share with you. Out of the 2,000 small farmers in India, we have 60% reduction in water, and 80% of these smallholder farmers increased their income, which is, I believe, it is one of the most important things, that they have access to better livelihood and better income, to give them as incentive to keep on using the practices that we are talking about nowadays. And we have 10 high-tech nurseries as well. More than 3,000 small farmers were trained on digital apps. And it is a very good example on how collaboration can boost sustainability and make it more sustainable for smallholder farmers. And not that we have stopped here, but also the final idea of having this project is to make these farmers entrepreneurs in their villages, so that we can transfer the project and the best practice to other villages beside the village we have made the best practice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So a follow-up question is, you know, collaboration usually is influenced by, at least in our regions, by the policy of the government. Usually donors, research institutions follow what the government is saying. Yeah? And that is where most of the investment is going, where the effort is going. So how do we make sure that the government is understanding these dynamics from the farmer's perspective, so that they mobilize the partners to support smallholder farmers? So what is probably your experience in doing that?
I have two comments in this policy. First of all, farmers should be integrated in the policy making, because they are the ones who are facing the challenges. So their voice must be in the policy making itself. Second is any project, any initiatives, any funding or financing to reach out to any commune. It is better effective to have to be economically valuable, or economically of long-term sustainability. We have all seen projects that been funded for a couple of years, very good projects, and after the fund has stopped, the project as well has stopped. So this is how I see how we should make policymaker thing in these two.
Thank you. So integrating farmers' views into the policy arena, making it participatory, bottom up in theory at least. In practice, you know, it's not an easy thing. We know that there's a lot of need to push for them to pull. I just wanted to go to Petra. We are talking about in your, no, not Petra.
Pilar.
Pilar.
Sorry, my apologies.
That's okay.
Pilar. So we're talking about incentives for farmers to adapt. So, and we're saying, you know, some of these regenerative soil health issues are taking time, are costly, you know, are not attractive immediately. It's a build-up over time. So from your institution's perspective, you know, what do we need to do? Both from the policy perspective, from the financial institution perspective.
Yeah.
What do we do to encourage farmers to adapt and even to demand technology and practices?
Yeah. So thank you for the question. And I think we need to think about that question in the context of food security. And let me just give you an example. I grew up in Bogota, Colombia in the 80s and the 90s, probably during the most violent times in the history of my country. And I saw a lot of violence, poverty, inequalities, and unfortunately, I saw a lot of food insecurity and malnutrition. And while a lot of things have improved in my country, the issue of food insecurity continues to be the same, not only impacting Colombia, but impacting Africa, impacting Southeast Asia, impacting a lot of countries around the world. And this is why food security is so important for our company. Our company's purpose is to nourish the world and to do it in a safe, responsible, and sustainable way. So everything we do in our company is to increase food production, to support the farmers to be more efficient, more effective, and successful, and to make sure that we can move food from places where it is produced to places where it's needed, while at the same time we protect the planet and reduce the environmental impact. So as it relates to policy, we certainly work with local governments because we believe in the local context. The policies and the approach that works in Australia may not work in Brazil, may not work in the US. So we really understand the realities, the economic realities, the policy realities in every country where we operate, and we make sure that we prioritize the farmer. Because if the farmers are successful, we know we can feed the world, we can protect the planet, and all of us can have a more prosperous life. So working with governments to support sustainable agricultural practices, to support regenerative agricultural practices, and to make sure that food can flow freely around the world. As it relates to Regen Ag, which is the question that you asked, so we have several different programs around the world, with one of our flagship programs being Regen Connect, which we introduced in the marketplace in North America 2.5 years ago. So the way that it works is that we incentivize farmers, which is the question that you asked. We incentivize farmers for environmental outcomes. So the more greenhouse gas reductions that we see, the more income the farmers are going to get. It increases the resiliency of the soil, it increases the biodiversity, and the overall ecosystem is a lot better, both from a biodiversity perspective, but also for the local communities. We have seen a difference, and we are fully committed to continue investing to support the farmers and to increase food security while we protect the planet.
Thank you very much. Thank you. A follow-up question to you is, I know a bit of Colombia. I've been a few times
Good.
there.
Excellent.
When you see a farm-level intervention, unless it's considered as part of a landscape management, if you're a farmer, if your neighbor upstream is not managing his farm well, whatever the downstream farmer is doing can be washed away, can be destroyed. So when we talk about sustainability and regeneration, it needs the collaboration of
Yes.
not only government and farmers, but farmers and farmers, a collective action. So in this type of engagement with your company, how do we really support beyond farmers and rather mobilize communities to adopt some of these practices?
So first and foremost, the world is dealing with highly complex problems. We're talking about climate change, malnutrition, food insecurity, inflation, supply chain disruptions, wars, geopolitical issues that are really impacting our ability to produce food. And we believe at Cargill that these problems are so complex that no company, no country can solve the problems alone. So we believe in collaboration, in partnership, in sharing best practices. And maybe to answer your question, we have seen how effective sharing best practices amongst farmers it is, as an example, in our cocoa production business in West Africa. So think about Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. We work with hundreds of farmers to produce cocoa, which we all enjoy in our chocolate chip cookies or chocolate bar. And the way that it works is that we put programs in place and allow farmers to access funding, also support with sustainable agricultural practices and technical support, so agronomy support. And we conduct workshops and sessions where we have farmers coming and talk about what is working and what isn't, so they can learn from each other. We also invest in training and development for farmers, but also for the local communities. We make investments in education and nutrition. And I'll just give you another example. So we have a significant presence in the country of Vietnam. We have an animal nutrition business, which I had the opportunity to lead for a while. And we are known as a school company because we have invested and we have opened up 106 schools in the country to support the local communities. And this is where I believe we're making a difference. And this is how I believe not only we are educating to the employees of today, but also the leaders of tomorrow.
Thank you very much. That's great. So I'll move to a different question. I think it has been already touched in the morning. I have seen data which shows that if you compare small-scale holdings, if you compare a conventional practice versus a regenerative, integrated, farming system, the cost could be up to 20% in 4 years' time, 20% more. So the question is, talk about regeneration, integrated soil health, landscaping. So, who is going to cover that cost of transition? How could we, share the cost? What are the incentives for people to invest on it when they see the risk? So Marcelo, if you can share your experience with us. So how do we make sure that particularly those smallholder farmers, with very limited appetite for risk,
well, in
could come
Argentina,
on board? Yeah.
there are big farmers. If we compare the size with other countries, we have a lot of network the farmers adapt this model because are more profitable also. The productivity is higher, the stability is higher also. But we have a strong networking between farmers, but we have a strong networking with companies like Syngenta, BASF, Cargill also. We need to co-build indicators, environmental indicators, to build a channel between farms to consumers. And we need to have some signals of the market, incentive of markets to difference between traditional system to sustainable systems in order to reach better financial product, a better price on the corn or meat or grains of fuels. We were in the first stage with exporters and companies building together these indicators. This is important to build this channel, and the consumers have a lot of potential to change the way we produce the foods. And if we provide with reliable information and the consumer's choice the more sustainable food, for example, change the way we produce. This is we need, in a global vision, I think the farmers need that kind of working with companies, policymakers, and consumers to agree about indicators. Perhaps we need to between the company and the farmers, the conversation are about indicators, and to the consumers is about the goals of this kind of agriculture. For example, regenerative agriculture. It's not enough to conserve, we need to improve the soil health, we need to fight climate change, so we need to build with companies these indicators and build this channel.
Thank you. So, talking about market signals.
Yes.
It has worked in organic agriculture somehow.
We need to combine productivity plus efficiency. Okay. We need to produce 40% more of food to 2050. We don't have more surface to add. We calculate 10% by breeding could improve our potential yields. We need to close the gap between potential and real achievable yield. And we need to explore double cropping. We need to use technology, responsibility. We need to advance on a site-specific agriculture. We need to advance in order to selective application, green on green, selective. We need technology. Organic is not necessary the way. We need to keep high levels of productivity with low environmental impact. We need to balance technology, hard technology, process technology to reach that. It's impossible without science and technology.
I understand. The issue is, does it exist? You know, if you see those crops which are producing high yield, they are also demanding inputs, fertilizers, demanding water. You know, a 10-ton maize would not grow on a biomass, on a recycled crop residue. So there are inputs that are critical. So how do we manage the trade-off? You know, producing more? At the same time?
I said we keep our fields green as long as possible. In this way, we control weeds from the systems, and we fix biologically nitrogen, for example, use less synthetic fertilizers. This means not use. We need to use the outputs with responsibility. It's not the same to don't use the output. It's like a medicine without human medicine. We need to use this technology responsibly.
Thank you. Very good. Probably a follow-up question, Petra, if you can share. So we're saying, we have a growing population that we need to feed. At the same time, we have environmental concerns, particularly when it comes to soil. So what type of technology, from your perspective, should reach farmers? And what are the experiences that could minimize the trade-offs and make sure that we might minimize variability, yield variability, feed the people at the same time, feed the environment.
So we are 100% on your philosophy, Marcelo. So we need to increase yields with lower impact. And so technology-wise, it can start with the right seeds. You have been talking about specialty seeds. That's actually not true. We are also moving on. Oh, it's part of it. It's true, of course. But what I'm saying is we are moving on. We are having artesian corn, which needs less water. We are having GMO corn that has lower emissions because it's more feed efficient. So there's a lot in the seed trade where we also increase nutrient efficiency that is going to come and reach the farmer. The next innovation piece is the biostimulants. So you can increase the physiology of the plant and stabilize the cells so they are not so stressed with heat, with low water. They have bigger roots, so there is more carbon in the soil, and a productive plant is actually the best carbon pump because it takes on more CO2 and sequesters it into the soil. So what many people believe, productivity is not only bad, because it's actually jolly good when you think about the physiology of the plant, the carbon it pumps, and also the land-sparing element, exactly like you said. Then we are listening to the problems of the farmers. You said it. So yes, cover crops is a good way to deal with seeds, but then also with weeds. But also then the problem is work. You want to plant the cash crop and the interval cover crop, for example, at the same time, but you must make sure one germinates faster than the other, not to have competition for the light. So we are working on germination delay, seed coatings, stuff like that comes from the practice to really enable this.
Thank you. So when we talk about soil health, it's not only coming from the soil. You could also work from the plant side, from the management side.
This is the innovation we need, and
Exactly.
we believe we need a flow of innovation. This must be an innovation sector coming forward to support farmers in their effort.
Yeah, and including microbes in the soil to facilitate the release. Most of the nutrients are, in fact, fixed in soils, in many soils, that should be released. Good. Probably the same question to Pilar. How do we support this transition? How do we support, and who should play that role? Is it the private sector? Is it the policy? Is it the farmers themselves? So your experience, please.
So it's a really good question, and we haven't really seen a lot of examples of consumers being willing to pay for sustainable solutions. We have seen maybe a couple of industries, a few product lines where we operate, where consumers are willing to pay a significant premium for sustainability. I probably go back to the comment I made before, which is it requires collaboration, it requires partnerships between the public and the private sectors. It requires companies like BASF, Syngenta, Cargill to work together with our customers, with our farmers, in a way that we reduce the cost of sustainability. At our company, we believe in investing in technology and innovation that delivers sustainable solutions. And we got multiple examples of how we are successfully seeing investments that are paying back. I'll give you an example in a moment, but ultimately, I think the more that we can work together, the more that we can decarbonize the food and agriculture sectors, the more that the cost for sustainability is going to decrease, and the more that we are going to increase awareness for consumers and governments and NGOs and companies to make sure that we are making the right investments together. Example that I had is around circular economy. And we are investing a lot in truly understanding how do we take waste, particularly food waste and or waste at the farm level, and turn it into something we can use. So last year we made an investment and we opened up a plant in Belgium that essentially takes food waste, particularly liquid oils. So think about the oils that are used for French fries or so many other uses in Europe, and we turn it using our state-of-the-art technology into biodiesel. And we are using that biodiesel in the transportation industry in Europe, not only to move food, but also to move commodities, other products, and solutions around Europe. So to me, that's an example of, it's not just at the farm. Obviously, for us, we prioritize the farmers, but it's also how can we work together and reduce food waste and eliminate food waste. Today, 30% of the food that is produced in the world goes to waste, yet 750 million people go to sleep hungry. So again, that's one of the examples of investing not only at the farm, but also to take waste and do something meaningful and productive with that.
Thank you very much. That's very, very important. If you see, African cities, if you go to countries like India, in fact, the major challenge is food waste, particularly in horticulture crops. So how do we really minimize that, recycle it back, even taking some of the nutrients back to the farm is going to solve a lot of problems, both in terms of pollution, methane, carbon release, at the same time, bringing the nutrients back to the system. This is a very probably interesting question that we could continue for hours to come. But I would love to give the opportunity to the public, to the participants, to ask questions to our distinguished panel. So any question on issues that has been raised? I still hope that you have energy to ask questions. Please.
Oh, fantastic. So you are talking about a major transformation. And I see two elements that are quite important, that are part of the enabling environment. So there are elements, perhaps, from a trade point of view, and there are elements from a regulatory point of view that perhaps they need as well to be transformed or to be part of this major transformation. Can you comment about what are these enablers from a trade and from a regulatory point of view that we also need to add to this agenda?
Who wants to go first?
Go.
So from an enabler's perspective, I would say investment from the private sector. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but I'll give a few elements of what I think you're asking, and please tell us if that is not what you're looking for. But I would say investment from the private sector, engagement with governments so we can understand policy and make sure that policy is fostering sustainable production of agriculture, engagement with the farmers so we understand what challenges are they facing on the ground, and we can leverage our expertise, our technologies to support sustainable production on the ground. Investment with the NGOs, civil society organizations to help us in advance the agenda, to help us understand what is it that we can do better, what is it that we can make more investments, and how can we collectively make sure that we protect the planet.
Maybe a few add-ons. I was reflecting on the conversation on the price of food, right? You were saying we have a market signal for organic agriculture, but this is a niche product in highly developed markets. We need to make sure to have the most sustainable food being the cheapest, so it gets scale, and so that people can afford it. So if we then look at where the money is coming from, we have all been hoping for the traders and the retail to start paying more for the better food. This is not going to be sustainable if you expect the consumer to pay, but it might be sustainable. I would be interested in your view, ultimately, if we think of it in terms of reducing Scope 3 emissions in the value chain, because there might be some money to be earned. And so the policy change then that is required is standards. Enable a good carbon market for agriculture, for sequestration, for avoided emissions, because through the climate impact of agriculture, we might mobilize resources that otherwise might not have been available. That's just one idea. The other is there's a big experiment going on in Europe with the Common Agricultural Policy, which the European Union tried to turn into ecosystem services rewarding machine, which didn't work quite out because there's a lot of money at stake, and where there's a lot of money, there's a lot of multiple different interests and lobbying. But I very much hope that the next agricultural policy, which is going to come 3, 4, 5 years, might have a different, that starts to be negotiated in the next term, can have a very different set of incentives to actually also reward the farmer for everything they are doing that is there besides food, to get some incentives into the system. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please, another round of questions. Do you want to add to that?
I was going to second what they just said, but maybe I would add. I believe that governments, private sector, NGOs, everyone has a share, but some countries are different than others. So maybe some of these initiatives and the funding system to come together. Some countries need national scheme to support, and others maybe not. Maybe they already have a national scheme. So it's always has to be to come back to the country itself. So I believe the initiator should be the government in some countries.
Thank you very much. So where private sector is weak in most countries in the south, it is a public, it is a government usually which is dictating the direction and the investment. So it's really an important point. Please.
Yes, thank you very much. I have 2 questions. My name is Nugusu. I come from Ethiopia. I have been to Barranquilla, Cartagena, and Bogota also. My question is, the first one is agriculture being the most important in terms of economy in the third world, especially the global south, I would say, in Ethiopia too. Unemployment being also one of the highest in these countries. How can we attract the youth to farming? This is one of the challenges that we have in many of the countries. The youth being unemployed, but leaving the country for pastures green to elsewhere out of the country. It's one challenge. So how can we make agriculture attractive to the youth so that they can start their own work in agriculture and be productive? And the second point I want to raise is small-scale farming, agriculture. Nowadays, it's not expanding the land because there's not even enough land maybe in some countries. So the most productive, the most valuable farming could be producing more per scale, per hectare, more production per hectare rather than expansive farming. So in resource limitations in the global south, especially in farmers in Africa, it's very limited resources that they have. What would you advise in that situation where there's not enough land to expand, but also produce in a small scale, in a small area of land?
Thank you. Thank you very much. So big questions. We may not answer all of them. But really, how do we attract the youth to agriculture and keep them in agriculture while they get money and food and becoming productive?
The second question first. I think the farmers need to find some place to thinking together about in what way we could resolve that kind of problems. Perhaps share machinery, I don't know. But my opinion is the power of farmers in the transformation. The farmers need to work together, face these common challenges and thinking about how can resolve. We can help telling about our methodology, but we need to find a way adapted to their context, your context. And the other one is I think an agriculture that use technology that is sustainable, sorry, and is attractive for young people, for people in general. We need to transform a dynamic sector with interchanging with companies, scientists, the farmers working alone in a small farm, don't keep in touch with other stakeholders is not attractive, I think, for anyone. And the young people don't want to be farmer. We need to think in a new way to do agriculture. It's not comparable, but in Argentina there are a lot of networks, agronomic advisors, farmers, contractors who has machinery that plant to the farmers, and the farmers pay for this because the farmers can't be each farmer a seed machinery. Perhaps we need to think in other aspect. Do you understand? One farmer buy a machinery and plant to the other farmers, and agronomic advice sharing between small farmers, and we need to resolve the problems, work together, I think. I mean, if we was clear, my English is not so good, but I...
No, that's good.
Okay.
That's good. So really, when you talk about farming, it's about the value chain. So it's about service provision of use, yeah? In terms of, it could be in terms of mechanization, bringing in machinery, could be in fertilizer supply, seed supply, distribution, aggregation, all along, so that they become part of the bigger value chain. Thank you very much. I think on the land shortage, I'll come to you. People keep saying Africa has the largest land, but in reality, these are either fragile systems which are non-productive, abandoned, or for wild animals, or wetlands that should be protected, or forests that should not be replaced. Yeah, these are not free lands per se. So producing more per unit of land, in a sustainable way is really the way forward. That's what we keep saying. And it is probably not everywhere. There are a few countries in Southern Africa, where there's a bit of land in Zambia and Zimbabwe, in Mozambique. So it's about really context, what do you do in the different parts of the continent, in Africa or in Asia. But as you said rightly, the expansion possibility is very, very much limited and will not take us really long because we are going to lose other ecosystem services by bringing that land into agriculture. We are getting close in terms of time, but I saw a hand here. Short questions, 2 short questions, and we'll end there. Huh? Yeah. So can you start from here? Yeah.
Yeah, I will try to make it short. Thanks, everyone, especially for the social responsibility for the good work you are doing. And today is the World Soil Day. And I just want to hear from you, in your perspective of social responsibility, what would you like to invest in supporting soil health, especially for the smallholder farmers who may not have the capacity to invest in that area? Thanks.
Thank you. I am Ndasho. I have one question in relation to this access to technology and availabilities. Given the increase in population and also the environmental concerns, this technology could be the solution to address the issue. So how can we make sure that these technologies can be accessible to all? And how can this technology can be also available to all?
Thank you very much. Yeah. So brief answers for these 2 questions. One on social responsibility, one access to technology and practices.
Okay, I'll take the social responsibility investments, and then you guys can answer the other ones or complement this one. So it is a number one priority for Cargill, the fact that we want to invest in empowering the communities, empowering women, and supporting the social aspect of sustainability is one of our 3 priorities for me specifically and for my entire team. So think about human rights, fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion. Women empowerment are priority number 1 in the company. I'll just give you one example. So we have an important business for Cargill in West Africa. So Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, we work with hundreds of farmers to support the production of cocoa. I mentioned this before, chocolate chip cookies, chocolate bar. And I visited our communities in West Africa about a year and a half ago, and I learned a lot. And I came from Colombia. Thank you for visiting Cartagena and Barranquilla. And I took my birth certificate for granted because I came home with my mom when I was a baby with my birth certificate and forgot about it. It gave me access to many things. In West Africa, some of our communities do not have access to a birth certificate, and it is very expensive. It's equivalent to a month of salary for families to pay for a birth certificate. As a consequence, children don't have access to healthcare, education, or even having their own identity. Together with our local business and with the support from the local governments, we have provided 45,000 birth certificates for the communities in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. That, to me, is an example of the investments we are making to support the communities because we know these children now will have a better life than before without a birth certificate.
We have a couple of experience in Africa, in Ghana and Guinea. With no chill to the governments local and the development African Bank. And, you know, we don't include farmers in this process. We have a big plot, fantastic plot with no chill, crop rotation, but we need to include farmers because if the farmers don't take this technology, the process don't start. We leave this plot and the agriculture continues in the same way. We need to include farmers. The isolation is not good for farmers. We need to work together, and it's very different scenarios, Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, several countries in Africa. We need to understand the reality, and the farmers know very well your cultural frame, your environment. We need to include farmers in this innovation process. It's fundamental.
Yeah, thank you very much. If I could also respond, when it comes to social responsibility, I mean, if we did some research in Uganda, whereby, you know, the yield of women managed farm was about 43% lower than a man managed farm. Partly because they don't get the technology, they don't get the visit of the extension agent, they don't get access to really critical inputs. So really, you know, targeting those social groups would be very, very important. When it comes to access to technologies, one of the challenges, you know, having very low extension and a farmer to extension ratio. Some extensionists, they don't even know the farmers. So ratio is up. In some countries, one extension is for 5,000 farmers, let alone really providing services. So we're trying to develop what we call village-based advisories. You know, dropouts, university retirees, university graduates didn't get jobs, train them, give them the tools, at the same time create job opportunities, businesses, so that they could be served as aggregators, as input delivery, you know, outlets, and then that, you know, provide available knowledge and technology to the farmers. With this, I am really grateful. I will not attempt to synthesize. I think this discussion should continue next year. and thank you very much for my panel.
Thank you.
And thank you for those interactions. All the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Lucy. Unless you have something to say.